It is 6:30 and I'd like to call this meeting of council to order and acknowledge that the city of Winkler is situated on Treaty 1 land, the home of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota and Dene peoples and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that have been made on these territories and acknowledge that there have been harms and mistakes in the past. And we dedicate ourselves to a future based on respect of all peoples, including Indigenous communities, in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration, moving forward to a harmonious, prosperous future together. Be it resolved that the minutes, I should take one step further back. Be it resolved that the agenda for the regular council meeting of April 22nd, 2025 be adopted. Mover?
Andrew.
Second?
Ryan.
Ryan got you by just a little bit. Do we see anything else that we need to take a look at there?
No additions, nope.
And I would like to add a short in-camera session regarding personnel, if I could.
Absolutely.
Anything else? All in favor? That is carried. Be it resolved that the minutes of the regular council meeting of April 8th, 2025 be adopted. Mover?
Ryan.
Second.
Peter.
Minutes are attached. Is there anything there that needs comment? All in favor? And that is carried. You see a few pieces of correspondence there. Waste reduction and recycling support rebate. Indigenous Survivors Day proclamation request. A melanoma awareness proclamation request. Any comments or thoughts on what you see in front of you? Again, each one of those is received then as information. Be it resolved that accounts payable in the amount of $1,903,016.99 as approved by the Finance Committee be approved for payment. Mover?
Andrew.
Second.
Don.
The check register is attached. You've had some brief moments to take a look at it. Do you have any questions on what you see? All in favor? And that is carried. Be it resolved that the financial report and statements for March 2025 be received for information. Mover?
Andrew.
Second.
Don.
The report is attached with explanation. A fair number of highlighted information that maybe answers a lot of the questions that we might have had as we were looking at it. Anything else from what you see?
Those the last lot sales or no? Is there still some left?
Excellent question.
I guess some have
yes.
agreements that haven't had payments, so I guess.
Correct. There's still one lot that will get payment for
Okay.
yet.
That'd be cleaned up this year then, I guess, eh? I would think.
I mean, part of today's, one of
road
the road closing is all part of that. So-
Okay, yeah,
So it
okay.
all depends on timing of subdivision and everything, yeah.
Okay.
Not seeing anything further? All in favor? Carried. Be it resolved that the minutes for the Winkler Police Board meeting of April 9th, 2025 be adopted. Mover?
Andrew.
Second.
Peter.
You've had a chance to review them. Any comments on those minutes?
Not really. Fairly status quo. I mean, they made a very nice joint effort
Yes, they did.
announcement with Morden. It's good to see they do a really good job working together on some of those drug investigations along with the regional TAC team and all that stuff. So even on general calls, when Morden can hear some of the radio stuff going on, they come if they need to, and
Good.
works really well together.
Good.
That's what I thought too. And really good to see that budget is in good shape and no concerns. That's always good. And also draft of the new police board policy presented. So
Correct.
that's good to see.
Yes.
So well done for bringing it there. Thank you.
And we got our annual report to Andrew Miner before he gets too excited.
Wow. Very nicely done. Thank you.
I think the other thing that sticks out a little bit to me is just some of the training opportunities that some of our constables had for senior police leadership course, and then the major crime units with the RCMP was a pretty big deal
True.
to get that kind of training for one of our constables, and that was paid for by the RCMP, so accommodations and everything. We gave up the time, of course, but just really valuable learning for us to have.
It helps our members develop additional skill sets, but secondly, and just as importantly for us, it puts those good skill sets to use in our community. And
Absolutely.
helping us police at a different level.
Yep.
Very nice. All in favor? Carried. Be it resolved that council approves subdivision 4463-258446, subject to city approval of engineered lot grading and drainage plans, service plans, a party wall agreement for proposed lots 1 and 2, and a major density variance for proposed lots 1 and 2. Mover.
Michael?
Second.
Don?
And Jody, is there anything that we need to be aware of outside of the shared notes that we see there?
I don't think so. In this case, even though it's not a public hearing, we do have the report to council, and staff have recommended approval of the subdivision with the conditions noted there. And you've already noted one of the other things that was required there, which is the major variance for density. So other than that, I think that's all I would highlight.
I noticed as well that communication has gone to the applicant.
Yep,
Any response from those?
I don't think so.
I'm
No.
kicked out. Are you guys kicked out?
Got kicked out.
Yeah.
We did lose internet just a little bit ago.
Luckily,
Henry's on his phone.
Paper copy.
Are you still? You just tethering?
yeah.
There you go. That's what I should do then.
So we will continue on then. So far, at least I'm here. Any additional thoughts or comments? All in favor? And that is carried. That takes us to item 10.2. Be it resolved that the following amendments be made to Schedule E of the Fees and Charges Bylaw number 2285-22. Mover?
Andrew?
Second.
Peter?
Thank you. We see them detailed there. Do you have any questions or thoughts on what's there?
No, these are some annual increases. I think specifically we noted there for community services, so some of the arena rates and pool and turf and so forth. But
The vast majority of them have a small COLA increase. There are a few pieces on the Meridian Exhibition Center
I'm
that
gone completely.
we're busy trying to figure out, make sure that we right-size. But outside of that, it's COLA increases to what's
Yeah.
there.
a lot of comparison between other communities to make sure we're not way out of place, but we're still
Yep.
in a similar place, so.
Okay. Any questions? All in favor? And that is carried. Be it resolved that bylaw 2337-25, the bylaw for a road opening on Norland Drive, be given second reading. Mover?
Marvin.
Second?
Ryan.
You've got the diagram there. Very straightforward, very clear. That's basically the turnaround, is that right?
That's correct. Yep.
Comments? All in favor? Carried. Be it resolved that bylaw 2337-25, the road opening for Norland Drive, be given third and final reading. Mover?
Michael.
Second.
Marvin.
Last chance for thoughts. All in favor? Carried. Be it resolved that the minutes for the Community Services Committee meeting of March 25th, 2025 be adopted. Mover?
Andrew?
Second.
Ryan.
Minutes and the in-camera notes are attached for your review. Do you have questions or comments on what you see?
No, I mean, this relates back to this fees and charges bylaw we talked
That was the biggest part. Yep.
about rates in this meeting, yeah.
Okay. All in favor? Carried. Be it resolved, the South Central Regional Library 2024 financial statements and minutes for the March 10th, 2025 meeting be received for information. Mover?
Ryan.
Second.
Don?
Don got it. Again, attached for your review and consideration. Any thoughts or comments? Anything particular we should be aware of, Ryan?
Yeah, I think basically, like you say, we reviewed the financial statements. It was not as good a year as the previous year, but still, they're still, they still have money in the bank, kind of thing. Otherwise, we talked about upcoming events. It's their 60th anniversary year, and they have a book sale now coming up. They had a quiz night, which is done now, and they have a book sale and a raffle that are going on right now. So,
Nice. Congratulations on 60 years.
absolutely. Yep.
Okay, all in favor? Carried. Be it resolved that the Winkler Centennial Golf Club meeting minutes for the March 27th, 2025 meeting be received for information. Mover?
Andrew?
Second.
Michael.
Again attached.
Yeah, this was our meeting right after the AGM, so we'd put some of the positions in place now with Grant leaving. So Mark Peters can be our treasurer there, and then we had a long discussion about the AGM and the capital desires from our members, so we gotta do a lot of planning this year.
And there are desires, always. Thank you for your willingness to continue to serve on that committee and leading that group. It's a treasure that we have that course in our community and allowed to have that many youth members and grow an interest in golf. So thank you for
That driving range was packed since we opened it, so.
Yeah, no, Dylan was saying it was basically standing in line to get out there, so it was very nice.
Yeah, it's great. The rain helps too.
Well, that's going to green everything up gorgeously. All in favor? Carried. Be it resolved that this regular meeting of council recess for the purpose of holding public hearings. Mover?
Ryan.
Second?
Peter.
All in favor? Carried. We will then have a public hearing for bylaw number 2340-25 to rezone 264 Main Street South. Jody, if you could help us out with that.
Indeed. Yeah, this is an application for rezoning, as you mentioned, 264 Main Street. Applicant here is Glenberg Design Builders, and it's to rezone to R2. And we have two objections that we've received, and those are attached in your supporting documents. One was just added this afternoon as we received it just today at around noon. So you have that in your documentation there. Most of you are familiar with this as it's been at the table here before. And you've got a report to council here, which has also been sent to the applicant late last week. And the planning department in this case is recommending approval with conditions as noted in the report to council. With our current density regulations in our zoning bylaw, this plan fits within those. If you would compare that to our previous density before we increased it, it would have been very close to that number. It would have been a minor variance.
Okay.
But it does comply with our current zoning densities for R2.
Okay. Thank you, Jody.
And aside from that, yeah, you see the rest of the supporting documents along with a site plan and other information.
Okay. I'll ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak to this. We'll start with anybody for this plan, this rezoning. If so, I'll ask you to come to the microphone, state your name and your comments, please.
I'm Sandberg from Glenberg Design Builders.
Evening, Sam.
I had an opportunity to watch back all the video from the previous meetings, and I realized how many times you had to remind me to come up here and do it. I do apologize for that. Old guy, learning slow sometimes, I guess. Yeah, and it also became very apparent to me through that just how, when you listen to things a second and a third time, you start to have a different kind of perspective on things, and I appreciate that these things are recorded so that we can do that.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that I just want to point out a couple of things about the development. So in the first, I guess in the first meeting, kind of the biggest concern was density. And in the second meeting, we didn't address that, although we addressed the parking. And we weren't able to carry through with the parking. So now what we've done is we've come back and we put the parking back in the rear, as you know from the plan. And we've reduced the density not only by 3 suites, but we've actually reduced the overall bedrooms by half. So when this started, the first time you heard this proposal, there was 12 suites with 3 bedrooms each, so 36 bedrooms, and we're now down to 18. So I guess the point is we heard you on occupancy, like on density, and we've adjusted that dramatically. I mean, I'll have some other comments about this site later on, but I'll save those for now.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here wishing to speak for this plan? Anyone else here wishing to speak for the plan? Not seeing anybody in chambers. I'll ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak in opposition to this plan. And I'll ask as well for you to come to the microphone, state your name and your points.
Here we are again. I'd rather not be here, but yeah, my name is Verna Martins, and I am directly the backdoor neighbor of the property in proposal here. Yes, the density has come down somewhat. I didn't submit a letter because I figured probably be repeating it from the last time around, but the biggest opposition that I have is parking in the back. The noise, the lights at night, and no, people who work night shift, they'll come home at all hours or leave. Yeah, the height of the building, I took a stroll down 4th Street where the same complex is built there, and I stood on the sidewalk and my heart kind of just sank because it is so huge, 3 stories high. So there's 6 families looking down on the backyard of that property, and there's no tree line, although Sam has said he'd like to put some more mature trees there. But we all know that trees take decades to grow very tall, where your privacy would be not so much of an issue. The garbage dumpster being in the back corner, where there's probably smell from 9 different families. And yeah, last 2 designs were not approved, and I just kind of thought this issue was dead, as it had been mentioned with parking in the back, that this would be just a dead project. So my thoughts were that perhaps the investors would maybe consider a single-level duplex unit where they could build back instead of up. And personally, I know somebody who would probably snap that up in a heartbeat. Especially for elderly people who have difficulty with stairs. So I just ask you to put yourself in my shoes. I've been there 26 years, and I purchased the place because I loved the backyard, the openness, the mature trees that were already there, and the peace and quiet of a neighborhood with less activity coming and going. So my question is, would you welcome this plan with open arms and willingly sacrifice what you value about your home? And if you can honestly say that I want this next to my backyard, then vote accordingly. After this meeting, you may go home and forget all about this, depending on how you vote. But I may never be able to forget, because I will have to look at this every day. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to this, for or against?
Kim Giesbrecht, 277 6th Street South, kitty corner backyard to this property. I wrote a letter to the City Council, so you would have likely read that. I learned recently that another apartment is coming around just around the corner, and I'm concerned that over the next few years our entire neighborhood is going to be neighbor apartment buildings, and things are dramatically changing. At first it was just this one, which was a huge concern, and now there'll be one around the corner on Southview, and there's more older properties which could be the same thing, and I just feel like there's no consideration given to the people who have lived there for a long time and to maintaining any of the qualities of a quiet residential neighborhood. After all the deliberation we've done over the last, was it 8 months since last summer, it just feels like everything was for nothing, and it's kind of back to square one, parking in the back, do it all over again. And even just the construction alone is a huge issue for me, as I've mentioned in the past, with stress levels and insomnia. It's going to be a huge factor in my life, and yeah, I just think that there's a lot more to consider than just get more apartments in the city. I really think that it's a much bigger consideration than just that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to this, either for or against? I would ask if maybe the developer wanted to speak to any of the comments that have been heard. Is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
I can appreciate the situation that you guys are in, because you have many things to consider in this. You know, we all want to increase the housing, appropriate housing in the community, and we want to do that in suitable ways as much as possible. I do know that every time one of these projects comes up, no matter where it is, especially if it's in an existing community, it does change the neighborhood. It does change that. I've acknowledged that before, I think. And I'd be foolish to think that it wouldn't. I do think, though, that as a developer, as we look at the different opportunities that there are in different areas, we do try to consider what is our proximity with this building, what is the proximity to other properties, and how will it affect them. And in this case, the size of this land is something that we do feel is, there's a reasonable separation. And the reason why we believe there's a reasonable separation, is there a possibility to put that image up on the screen? So this image, you might wonder why there's a Boeing 737 parked in our backyard on this picture. The reason why that's on there is because it actually fits. That's between our fence and our building. It's a substantial amount of separation that we believe is reasonable. Our green space, like the conversation has been about green space, maybe it wasn't brought up today specifically, but it has been in the past. Our green space, just the green space at the back of our property, is the equivalent to our neighbor's entire yard. So for Kim and Verna, their entire property fits in our green space. Then again, our parking lot, again, is in excess of the size of one of their yards. So we're literally the equivalent of being 2 entire yards away, and that's just from our fence. So for another reference, Henry, I don't know how good your eyesight is. If you look at that window and you look for the black lampstand that's at the corner of the 2 streets sitting on the parking lot, or sitting on the sidewalk, I should say, that's the distance from my deck to the neighbor's deck. So these are the reasons why one of the reasons why we continue to come back with this, because we really do feel that it is a fair ask and a fair development for that area. We're not denying the fact that things are going to change there. They are going to change somewhat. But we do believe that when we bring these things forward, we're not just thinking about our neighbors, we're thinking about our whole community. That's the way we're seeing it. We're seeing this, yes, we want to feel for the neighbors, and we want to be aware of the concerns and try to address those as much as possible, which I believe we've demonstrated a number of times. But we're also thinking of the big picture here. We have trades and their families that have been waiting to start this project since September. We have people that are still waiting to get into apartments that don't have a place to live. And just from a city perspective, from a taxation and from a financial perspective, it just makes a lot more sense to put these things in as infill wherever it's reasonable. I think when it comes to just directly answering the question about visibility from different suites, because this is a 2.5 story, it's actually a 2-story plus a basement. I would say that the main floor people, those decks, they don't have a view to the backyards, but I would say that it's accurate that the top floor people from their patios would have somewhat of a view of the backyard. That I would agree with. Something else, I guess, we did a traffic study on our backyard. We set up a trail cam on Main Street just to get kind of an idea as to what is the actual amount of traffic, what's the maximum number of parking spots that are being covered at any given time there. And so we thought about this late, and so we didn't get a lot of data, but we got about 5 days of data, including the weekend. And so what we experienced is anywhere from 8 traffic count up to 41. So 41 in a day, that could mean, like what we observed quite a bit on the camera, is that somebody would come in, they would park, somebody would come out, get in their car and drive away. So when I say 41, we count that as 2, in and out. We also witnessed at that particular property very little activity after midnight. In fact, there was only one day where there was traffic at that hour of time. The majority of that traffic happens at the start of the day, at the start of the workday. There's a little bit at lunch, and then there's a bunch in the evening, somewhere between 6 and 9 o'clock. There's a bulk happening during that time. After dark, limited. What we also observed from that is that at that particular property, there was a maximum of 9 vehicles occupying the 14 parking spots that were there. So there was an excess of 5 parking spots at all times during that period of time. That corresponds with our other findings. I do spot checks, and Nick does spot checks. Sometimes he just drives by a property and just says, hey, what's going on back here? Is everything good? Are things holding up? And regularly we see that there's many parking spots that are empty. In fact, on Victoria Street, the number of cars there is even less than this. My daughters live in one of those suites, and they have a view to the backyard, and they often say, like, where's all the cars? Like, where are all these people? So a lot of them are walking. They're in town, so they're walking. I think a lot of the families are also immigrants, so they're coming in and they don't necessarily, maybe they don't have the finances yet to own a car, or maybe they just don't see the need to have a car. But all we can say is it's consistent that at 3 buildings currently, all of them are similar, lots of parking available. Yeah, those are a few points. Is there going to be more noise? Yep, there is. There's going to be more activity there because there's nobody living there at all right now. So no matter what we build there, there's going to be construction noise. There's going to be traffic noise. There's going to be probably some people noise. I would think so. I don't know if it'll be people noise. I don't know if it'll be any more than if you had 3 or 4 families living at the front of that and using that as their playground. I don't know that that would change things much at all that way. But vehicular traffic, there would be more. Yeah. Otherwise, I think that's probably about all I got for now. Yeah. It's good. Any questions for me?
Thank you, Sam. That is the next point, Council. Do we have any questions, either of our proponent or either of our speakers in opposition?
I think one of your speakers asked about, or talked about trees and stated that you talked about putting trees in.
Yes.
Comment on that?
Yes, thank you for reminding me of that. Yes, I mentioned to Verna that my goal would be, like, because she's really the only one, like between the two of them, she's the only one that will have a visual of my yard. Like from Kim's site, like we are leaving all of our mature trees up there, and based on the age and size, and when they're fully leaved out, the visibility there is virtually nothing during the summer. But through Verna's place, the visibility would be much greater. There we plan to bring trees of, like we've offered, like if she has some favorites that she thinks would block out the view better than others, we were happy to do that. And we would bring in more mature trees, something that needs a tree spade, something that will bring in and immediately add some deflection. I mean, it's obviously it's going to take a few years for it to really, really get full. But as mentioned, we have such a big green space there, it's easy for us to put up a number of trees there to accommodate the visual portion of this.
Thank you. Additional questions?
My initial concern was 3-story, but it sounds like it's not the full 3-story. But
No, half of it's in the ground, half of that bottom story is in the ground. Yeah.
no, I'm glad it went down from 36 to 18 bedrooms. That's a big deal for me, for sure.
Yeah, good.
Comments or questions from council before we close the hearing? Any? Absolutely. Again, I'll ask you to come to the microphone. And the reason we ask that is not that we can't necessarily hear you, but as you know, each one of our meetings is broadcast, and the community should have an opportunity to hear what the comments are.
Sorry, I just wanted a moment just to bring up a photo. Can I show each of you?
Absolutely.
So this is basically how it looks from the 4th Street. You can see that there's 2 decks, 2 levels of deck.
So what's being shown to council now is the view from 4th Street to an existing project that would be very similar to this one.
This is the building on Fifth Street, on Main Street side.
Can you get that on the screen or no?
So that's the existing house.
I don't think we have that.
Somebody take a picture and.
Okay. I have more, but.
Let's see.
See that one there.
Get it here.
This would be,
And that is the view from 4th Street, is what you're saying.
The sidewalk on 4th Street. So it's just like,
so would this be same distance
up there.
from the sidewalk to, from your place?
I'd be closer, I'd be deeper in.
Is this the one she's talking about?
I have 62 feet.
This is
of,
5th Street.
uh,
It was from 4th
Oh,
Street.
yeah.
Right, your backyard is 62 feet.
Yeah, he's got it up there now too.
Yeah, there it is.
That is similar view, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for finding that, Jody.
This is from 4th Street to 5th Street. Okay.
The other thing I wanted to mention, the houses that are put up on Victoria, their backyard is the Maranatha Church parking lot. And I've heard that other people on Albert Street, where there's some other larger or multiplex buildings, there's opposition there as well by neighbors. So, yeah, it's a dilemma. I understand that. But do you sacrifice the people that are there already for, newcomers? I don't know. I'm not against newcomers. It just doesn't feel like this is the right area. This is also 2 blocks further away from the downtown. So there could be more need for vehicles. Yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you for your comments. I will again ask council, is there any further comments or questions before we close the hearing?
I guess I had one further question, like when I look at the height, and I can't remember now whether, and I'm offline again, whether there's a height variation request in this as well? Or is that?
No.
So that would go, like somebody built a 2-story house that would be,
It could be 35 feet tall.
okay.
I guess my question is, there was one of these opposition letters that said, like, they thought it was dealt with and it came back. I thought it was said too that once it gets denied, it can't come back up for a certain period of time. So is this different, or how did that
I
change?
think our understanding of that, and Steph can correct me if I'm wrong, is that council has the ability to change their mind if they want to reconsider a rezoning. And that was our understanding of the will of council.
Okay.
I think density was the bigger issue last time, if I'm right. Okay.
I'm not a huge fan of parking in the back. I like it in the front better, but I know that's not really what the city's plan is, which is fine. I'm only one vote. 2-story, whatever, the beauty of living in those old streets, you got these big yards, which are beautiful, and you get used to that, and things change. And I know where we lived there all alone for quite a few years, and we had no neighbors, and it was absolutely wonderful. And the neighbors built it, it was like, oh, this is getting a little close to me, and because you're not used to it, and we love our neighbors. We have wonderful neighbors, but we have a 2-story beside us, and they built a 2-story deck that overlooks our yard, and like I say, we have wonderful neighbors, we love them. And, but it happens in other areas also, you know, and they spent about a year and a half building their house. And they followed the rules, you know, through timelines and stuff like that. And like I say, we love our neighbors, they're wonderful people. But it happens everywhere, in old and new developments.
Just state, though, that's one neighbor. This would be 9 neighbors, 9 families.
Appreciate the additional comment. Thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing any additional comments or questions from council. I'm not seeing additional comments or questions from the community. Sam, again.
I just wanted to add one more point of clarification, like for perspective. Your perspective on what's visible and what's not visible can be altered considerably by how far away you are from something and your angle of approach, right? So something to consider on these other properties, like when you look at our property on Main Street, our backyard is 50 feet, almost 50 feet deeper than that property. So when you add that distance, and if you also stand about 100 feet closer to that fence, because the image that we're seeing, that we saw here, was from the street over, right? So we know that the further back that you stand, the lower that fence goes and the more this visualization changes, right? I really do think that main floor deck will not be a really high sight line item, but really probably 3 families will have a visual, is what I would estimate.
Thank you for those additional comments. And I'll give you an opportunity to respond.
One more time. I don't know about the sight lines or not, but you saw very clearly that it was six families, not 3, that would have a clear vision into my backyard.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, not seeing anything further. Be it resolved that the public hearing for bylaw number 2340-25 be closed. Mover?
Ryan.
Ryan got it. Marvin got the second. All in favor? That is carried. And that takes us to, be it resolved that bylaw number 2340-25 be given second reading. Mover?
Michael.
Second?
Peter?
Peter. Comments or questions? All in favor?
Hold on.
Oh, my
When
mistake.
was
Sorry.
first reading?
First reading put it on the floor for the advertising to allow this to happen, correct?
Yeah, I can check on the date, or
Wasn't
do
that
you guys
March?
have it handy?
I think that was 2 meetings ago.
Oh,
I
okay.
believe so, but let's confirm that date so we can have some confidence that we have the right one. Typically, first reading allows the advertising to happen so that we can have this hearing and everybody is notified of it.
Okay.
February 25th.
Okay.
February 25th. Thank you, Stephanie.
Okay. Sorry.
Ready for the question?
Is it on the floor already?
Is it
It's on the floor, and we're doing second reading.
So debate.
Comments? If
Debate on
yeah,
the third or the second reading?
Second.
The second reading.
correct. Third comes afterwards if this passes.
Comments, Don?
Well, I struggle with these, and I've been on both ends of it, from selling to investors to, you know, putting people into these places and stuff like that, and I struggle when you take single family and make it multifamily, and it's always a struggle, and that would make people not run for council when you have to sit here and try to make decisions like this, because it's tough. But you look at our provincial government that pushes infill, look at our federal government that pushes infill, like quit building out, build in, you know, build up, build whatever, you know, so we're getting it from both, every angle, and it's always, it's a tough one.
I still think we should clarify where we feel this downtown redevelopment should take place so that we see this in the areas that we want to see it in. And if this is one area that we do want to see it in, then we should just make that clear. But yeah, I don't like you making this decision, no.
And I think, comments, Jody, this is consistent with our development plan, is that correct?
Yeah, consistent with the development plan and consistent with the infill guidelines that we have. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions that?
The other, what I should have asked the neighbors, whether they can get into their backyard, because the other option would be always is to plug a few mature trees into, not necessarily the new backyard, but the existing backyards, which would really block view and out of sight, out of mind. But I'm not sure if that can get into backyards, certain backyards or not.
Probably could before construction.
Well, I'm just thinking.
You'd have to open up a fence.
Yeah,
maybe.
depending, to have the, we've moved on some big trees over time in different yards, and it's amazing how you can, with a couple of strategic placed 10 or 12 foot, we love evergreens, you can block lots of view very, very quickly. And if you put them on the neighboring yards instead of on this, it blocks it even more. I don't know, but that's.
And again, with the public hearing being closed at this point.
Yeah.
The conversation is here.
Yeah, no, I know, yeah.
I like the fact that there's plenty of room between the building and the fence. There's about 120-ish feet. Is that about right?
Again, the question would be of our staff at this point. The hearing itself is closed, so the debate is here or questions from our staff. Do we have more questions or comments before I ask the question? It does not appear so. All those in favor?
I don't know how to vote on this one.
All those in opposition? And one abstention?
I don't. I don't know. I haven't made up my mind.
Okay. We're past 511 on second reading. We will then move to third reading. And be it resolved that bylaw 2340-25 be given third reading, subject to city approval of engineered grading and service plans and the construction and ongoing maintenance of a 6-foot-tall solid fence along the southwest and northerly proper boundary in accordance with zoning regulations. Mover.
Michael?
Seconder.
Marvin.
We don't talk about trees here at all.
Can we add some?
Yeah.
What's that?
Can we add some trees?
I suspect that probably would make sense based on what we're hearing.
And how specific do we have to get?
I think what I've heard is these are going to be trees that we're going to work together, our developer will work together with the neighbors to find a type of tree that would make sense and a type of tree that would be of size that they would need to be spaded in. So these are not going to be 2-foot-tall trees.
Okay, I
That's
would
what I'm
say
hearing.
is spaded in trees.
And again,
Just to make it, somehow we got to make it, I just don't want 2-foot,
Agreed.
2-foot oak trees there that are going to take 25 years to grow.
So as identified in the report, a landscaping plan is required by the city. So if there's specific criteria that council would like to see, it should be stated now.
Yeah.
But otherwise, we would receive the feedback from council. It sounds like we have a willing developer, some neighbors that have yet to express opinions on tree variety and height. So we would work with parties involved, unless council would like to prescribe something specific here.
I just think we need to do something that's substantial. Like, how do you
Agreed.
specify substantial? That's.
And I think I would suggest that the agreement will work together with the City of Winkler, but again, a willing developer in consultation with neighbors to make sure that there are trees of significance that are there that help with sightlines. That is very important, I believe, and I hear that, I believe, from the others as well.
Yeah. And I heard that from the developer as being their intent to do that, so.
Final comments before I ask the question.
So now that is included?
That is the direction we've given to our staff that will be worked into the development agreement.
There will be a development agreement. Right now, the recommendation is just grading and servicing plan.
Okay.
If you'd like a development agreement, we would just need to
And
terms.
I would ask Stephanie for some assistance in terms of how do we make sure that gets into the agreement. I'm not interested, and haven't heard from council interested in making this more onerous. The key is we would like to see trees, and we would like them to be in consultation with the neighbors and trees of some significance.
Okay. Now that can be done as a condition of the development permit approval. Because
Excellent.
the landscape plan is a condition of that approval.
Perfect. I'll ask one last time. I don't see anything. All those in favor? In opposition? And in abstention?
I appreciate the efforts that have been put into here. I still struggle. I don't know. I guess if it's in my backyard, I don't have any lots that are that big in my backyard. But I don't know. I don't know.
In abstention?
I guess that's what I did last time. It's not really what we're supposed to do here, though, but.
But it is your conscience and it is your decision.
Okay.
Okay,
And I mean, abstention is a no, right? So,
ultimately, yes.
all right.
511, Jody? And that is carried. That takes us to public hearing for bylaw number 2336-25, the road closing for Russet Road. Jody?
Yep, this is to finalize the subdivision of that last lot that we're selling. It took some work after surveying and everything just to make sure we had the correct final lot size. So now that we have that, we need to follow through on this road closing.
Okay. Is there anybody here wishing to speak to this, either for or in opposition? Not hearing any. Council, any thoughts or questions before we close the hearing? Be it resolved that the public hearing for bylaw number 2336-25 be closed. Mover?
Ryan.
Peter got it. Ryan got the second. Questions? All in favor? And that is carried. Be it resolved that bylaw 2336-25, a road closing for Russet Road, be given second reading. Mover.
Ryan.
Second.
Michael?
Thoughts or comments? All in favor? And that is carried. Be it resolved that bylaw 2336-25, the bylaw for road closing of Russet Road, be given third and final reading. Mover.
Don.
Second.
Ryan.
Comments? All in favor? Carried. Be it resolved that public hearings be adjourned and regular council reconvene. Mover.
Peter?
Second.
Ryan.
All in favor? Carried. That takes us to our other business and questions from the media or public relevant to this meeting of council. Not seeing anybody in chambers, not seeing anybody online. Be it resolved that this regular meeting of council be adjourned to move into in-camera. Mover.
Marvin?
Marvin got it. Who's the second?
Andrew?
Andrew got the second. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much for coming this evening.